24 years, and it's all in the mud.
The roses were perfect. 24 red blooms, exactly one for each year we'd been married, arranged in crystal that caught the morning light streaming through our kitchen window. I'd driven to 3 different florists to find the right ones, spent an hour writing a letter that laid my heart bare on cream-colored paper, and wrapped her favorite perfume, the expensive French stuff she'd mentioned exactly once 6 months ago. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I said, setting everything on the granite countertop as Sarah walked in wearing her tennis outfit. White everything, naturally. Had to match the pristine suburban image. She barely glanced up from her phone. "Oh, thanks, Dave." Her fingers kept scrolling through Instagram, probably checking what the other wives were posting about their perfect lives. "Did you see the letter?" I asked, feeling like an idiot for even having to point it out. "I'll read it later. The girls are expecting me at brunch in 20 minutes. She grabbed her keys without touching any of my gifts. "Don't wait up. We're doing spa treatments after." I watched her BMW disappear down our street of identical McMansions, each one a monument to keeping up appearances. 24 years of marriage, and I got the same enthusiasm she'd show a telemarketer. But hey, at least I tried. Story of my life. 3 hours later, I decided to surprise her at the country club. Maybe bring her favorite coffee, salvage something from this train wreck of a birthday celebration. I'd been fixing Mrs. Henderson's fence all morning, blue-collar work that apparently embarrassed my wife these days, but I cleaned up and drove over. The parking lot was full of luxury SUVs and convertibles. I found Sarah's BMW easily enough, parked between her friend Monica's Mercedes and that new woman Jessica's Porsche. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see them on the terrace, mimosas sparkling in the sun, perfectly manicured hands gesturing as they talked. I was about to head inside when something behind the building caught my eye. A maintenance cart, and next to it, scattered in the mulch like discarded trash, were my roses. Every single one. The crystal vase lay in pieces. The perfume bottle was cracked, its contents soaking into the dirt. And my letter, the one where I'd written about still seeing the girl I'd married in her eyes, about wanting to grow old together, about loving her more now than the day we met, was torn in half and thrown on top like confetti. I stood there staring at the wreckage of my morning's work, my heart doing something between breaking and hardening into stone. Then I heard the laughter drifting from the terrace, high and sharp and cruel. "Writes these pathetic love letters like we're still in high school," Sarah's voice carried clearly in the afternoon air. 20 pages about his feelings. "I swear, sometimes I think he's more emotional than my teenage daughter." More laughter. Monica's voice joined in. "At least your husband tries. Mine just grunts and expects me to be grateful." "Oh, Dave tries all right," Sarah said, and I could hear the eye roll in her tone. Roses, poetry, the whole romantic comedy routine, it's exhausting, like being married to a golden retriever. The women erupted in giggles. I felt my face burn with humiliation, standing there like an eavesdropping fool while my wife turned our marriage into entertainment for her friends. "Speaking of exhausting," Jessica said, lowering her voice just enough to make me strain to hear, "how's your work situation? Still dealing with that demanding boss?" Sarah's laugh was different now, softer, almost secretive. "Richard's not demanding, he's thorough, very hands-on." "Hands-on?" Monica's voice was loaded with meaning. "Let's just say some late nights at the office are more productive than others." My blood turned to ice water. The way she said his name, Richard, like it was something precious. The tone that used to be reserved for me, back when she actually looked at me instead of through me. I backed away from the building, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my keys. 24 years? 24 goddamn years of working 60-hour weeks to pay for this house, this lifestyle, these friends who thought I was a joke, and she was... I couldn't even finish the thought. Not yet. But as I drove home through our perfect neighborhood with its perfect lawns and perfect lies, one thing became crystal clear. If Sarah wanted to play games, she'd picked the wrong opponent. She'd forgotten something important about her golden retriever husband. I'd grown up in the city, learned to fix things with my hands, solve problems other people couldn't handle. And when something was broken beyond repair, I knew exactly how to tear it down. My friend Red showed up at my garage the next morning with coffee and a knowing look. We'd been buddies since high school, back when Sarah was still impressed that I could rebuild an engine from scratch. Red had gone into security after his stint as a cop, ran a small company that specialized in surveillance for divorce cases. "You look like hell," he said, handing me a cup. Feel worse. I told him about the birthday disaster, the trashed gifts, the conversation I'd overheard. Red listened without interrupting, his weathered face getting grimmer with each detail. You want to know for sure? He asked when I finished. I need to know. Red nodded. I can help with that. Nothing illegal. Nothing that'll bite you in court later. Just good old-fashioned detective work. We started simple. Red installed a basic GPS tracker on Sarah's car, the kind parents use to monitor teenage drivers, completely legal since my name was on the title. He also gave me a voice recorder, small enough to hide in our bedroom. Don't get fancy, Red warned. No spy movie BS. Just document the facts. The facts, as it turned out, were worse than I'd imagined. Sarah's schedule was a masterpiece of deception. Yoga classes that didn't exist, shopping trips to stores that were closed, business dinners that lasted until midnight. The GPS showed a pattern. Twice a week, she'd drive to the Marriott downtown, park in the same spot, stay for exactly 2 hours. The voice recorder picked up phone calls, hushed conversations after she thought I was asleep. I can't keep making excuses to Dave, she whispered one night. He's starting to ask questions. Then stop making excuses, a man's voice replied through the speaker. Smooth, confident, entitled. You're a grown woman, Sarah. You don't need permission to live your life. It's not that simple, Richard. We have history. 24 years of it. History's just another word for baggage. You deserve better than some blue-collar handyman who peaked in high school. I gripped the recorder so hard I thought I might crush it. Blue-collar handyman. Like the work that paid for her tennis lessons and spa days was something shameful. I know, Sarah said, her voice getting softer. Sometimes I look at him and wonder what I was thinking. We're just different people now. You've evolved. He hasn't. There's no shame in outgrowing someone. The call ended with plans to meet Thursday night. Same hotel, same room. I sat in my garage until dawn, staring at tools I'd collected over decades of honest work, thinking about evolution and shame and the price of outgrowing your promises. Thursday afternoon, I followed her to the Marriott, watched from the parking garage as she walked into the lobby wearing a red dress I'd never seen before. 15 minutes later, a man in an expensive suit joined her at the elevator. Tall, silver-haired, the kind of confident stride that came from never doubting you deserved whatever you wanted. Richard Castellano. I'd looked him up online after hearing his name. Senior partner at Sarah's marketing firm, divorced twice, drove a Tesla that cost more than I made in a year. They disappeared into the elevator together, and I sat in my truck feeling like the biggest fool in Texas. My wife was upstairs with another man, probably laughing about her pathetic husband who still believed in love letters and anniversary roses. But fools could learn new tricks, and I was a fast learner when properly motivated. I waited until they came back down, Sarah's lipstick slightly smudged, Richard's hand resting possessively on her lower back. Then I got out of my truck and walked over to his Tesla. The honey went into the gas tank first. Old mechanic's trick. Wouldn't cause permanent damage, but it'd gum up the engine real nice. Then I let the air out of all 4 tires, slow and quiet. Finally, I left a note under his windshield wiper. Hope it was worth it. Happy belated birthday. I was back in my truck when they came out to the parking garage. Watched Richard's face go from confusion to rage as he discovered his car troubles. Sarah looked around nervously, like she sensed hunters in the shadows. Smart woman. She should have trusted that instinct. As they called for a tow truck, I drove home and started planning phase 2. If Sarah wanted to play house with her boss, she'd learn what happened when you underestimated the handyman. Some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed, but they could sure as hell be replaced. Sarah's company Christmas party was held at the Riverside Country Club, the same place she'd trashed my gifts 3 months earlier. Poetic justice, Red called it when I told him my plan. You sure about this? He asked, loading the laptop into his van. Once you press that button, there's no taking it back. Good, I said. I'm tired of being the only one with something to lose. We'd spent weeks preparing. Every text message Sarah thought she'd deleted, I'd recovered from our phone bill. Every email she'd sent from our home computer was backed up on my external drive. Red had used his contacts to get photos of her and Richard entering the hotel, time-stamped and crystal clear. But the real gold mine was what Sarah had said about her coworkers. Turned out my wife had opinions about everyone she worked with, and she'd shared them all with her lover in explicit detail. Monica from HR is such a kiss-a, read one text. She covers for me because she thinks we're friends, but honestly, I'd fire her tomorrow if I could. The woman has the backbone of a jellyfish. Another gem. Richard, you should see how pathetic the other wives are at these company events. Jennifer's husband lost his job 6 months ago, but she's still pretending they're not broke. I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. And my personal favorite, the best part about our arrangement is that you get great Zex, and I get career advancement. Win-win. Though I have to admit, the sneaking around is kind of exciting. Makes me feel young again. Red had compiled it all into a slideshow, complete with hotel photos and a soundtrack. We tested it twice to make sure everything worked perfectly. The party was in full swing when I arrived. Sarah looked stunning in a black cocktail dress, playing the perfect executive's wife, while her husband sat home like a chump. She was talking to Monica and Jennifer, probably gathering more material to share with Richard later. I found Red by the bar. He nodded toward the projection screen they'd set up for the company's year-end presentation. Audio-visual guy stepped out for a smoke. We've got maybe 10 minutes. More than enough. I watched Sarah laugh at something Richard said, her hand touching his arm in a way that looked casual but wasn't. They'd gotten sloppy, confident in their secret. That confidence was about to cost them everything. Red gave me the thumbs up. Showtime. The first slide appeared on the big screen just as the company president was starting his speech about teamwork and loyalty. Sarah's face, mid-laugh, caught in the hotel lobby with Richard's hand on her back. Conversations died. Heads turned. Sarah went white as her dress was black. "What the hell?" Richard started, but his voice was drowned out by the audio file starting to play. Sarah's voice, crystal clear through the sound system, talking about Monica's spinelessness and Jennifer's financial problems. The room erupted. Monica looked like she'd been slapped. Jennifer's face crumpled as everyone stared at her, now knowing her secret shame. Other coworkers found themselves featured in Sarah's character assassinations, their private struggles and professional weaknesses laid bare for entertainment. But I'd saved the best for last. The final slide was simple text, white letters on a black background. "Your husband is divorcing you, Sarah. Effective immediately. Enjoy your career advancement. Dave." Sarah stood frozen in the middle of the chaos, tears streaming down her face as her carefully constructed world collapsed around her. Richard was shouting at someone to turn off the projector, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen everything. Monica stormed over to Sarah, her face twisted with rage. "You backstabbing witch! I covered for you! I lied to HR for you! Monica, please, I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been laughing at me behind my back while I protected your affair?" Jennifer joined the confrontation, her voice shaking with hurt and anger. "My husband's unemployment was funny to you? Our struggles were gossip for your boyfriend?" The crowd pressed closer, and I could see Sarah's panic growing. She looked around desperately, probably hoping to find a friendly face, but there were none left. Her work friends had heard what she really thought of them. Her boss/lover was too busy trying to save his own reputation to help her. Richard grabbed the microphone from the stunned company president. "This is obviously a vindictive attack by Sarah's unstable husband. These messages are taken out of context." "Which part was out of context?" I called out from the back of the room, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "The part where she called you a pig who's fun in bed, or the part where she said sleeping with you was just career advancement?" Every head turned to stare at me. Sarah's eyes went wide with recognition and terror. I'd been invisible to her for so long she'd forgotten I could bite back. Richard's face went purple. "You son of a witch! I'll have you arrested for maltreatment." "With what evidence?" "Those are your girlfriend's own words recorded in my house, sent from my computer. All perfectly legal." I smiled at him, the same smile I'd practiced in the mirror for weeks. "Though I'm sure your wife will be interested to hear them. Ex-wife number 3, right? This should make for interesting divorce proceedings." The crowd murmured with renewed interest. Office affairs were one thing, but a married executive sleeping with his employee while trash-talking everyone else? That was career self-destruction. Sarah tried to approach me, her voice breaking. "Dave, please, we can work this out." "Work what out?" I asked loudly enough for everyone to hear. 24 years of marriage, and you threw it away for a promotion and some excitement. There's nothing left to work out. I turned and walked toward the exit, feeling lighter than I had in months. Behind me, the party devolved into angry accusations and corporate damage control. Sarah's sobs followed me to the parking lot, but I didn't look back. Phase 2 complete. But I was just getting started. Sarah came home that night like a hurricane, slamming doors and screaming about humiliation and betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I let her vent while I sat in my recliner, beer in hand, watching her perform. "How could you do this to me?" she shrieked, still in her party dress but with mascara streaked down her cheeks. "In front of everyone I work with." "Worked with," I corrected calmly. "Pretty sure that job's history." Her face went even redder. "You destroyed my career, my reputation." "I didn't destroy anything, Sarah. I just showed people who you really are." Turns out they didn't like what they saw. She grabbed a picture frame from the mantel, our wedding photo, and hurled it at the wall. Glass scattered across the hardwood floor I'd installed myself 5 years ago. 24 years of marriage, and you throw it away for what? Revenge? Because your feelings got hurt? I stood up slowly, setting my beer down with deliberate care. I threw it away? I'm not the one who's been screwing my boss for 6 months. I'm not the one who trashed birthday gifts behind a building like garbage. I'm not the one who called her husband a pathetic golden retriever to her friends. Sarah's anger faltered for a moment, replaced by something that might have been shame. But only for a moment. That was private conversation. Nothing's private when you're cheating, sweetheart. You gave up that right when you decided our marriage vows were just suggestions. The front door opened, and our daughter, Emma, walked in. 22 years old, fresh out of college, and clearly taking after her mother in the entitlement department. She'd been living with us since graduation, saving money for her own place while working at a non-profit downtown. "What's all the screaming about?" Emma demanded, looking between us with irritation rather than concern. Sarah immediately switched into sufferer mode, tears flowing fresh. "Your father has lost his mind. He sabotaged my career, humiliated me in front of my colleagues." "Because she's been cheating," I interrupted. "For months, with her married boss." Emma's expression didn't change much. No shock, no disappointment, just mild annoyance, like I'd told her we were out of milk. "So you decided to destroy her life instead of handling it like an adult?" I stared at my daughter, wondering when she'd become this cold stranger. "Handling it like an adult? You mean like pretending it wasn't happening? Like your mother handled her marriage vows?" "Mom's been unhappy for years," Emma said with the casual cruelty only family could deliver. Anyone with eyes could see that. Maybe if you paid attention to what she needed instead of assuming flowers and love letters were enough. "Emma," Sarah tried to stop her, but the damage was done. "What she needed?" I felt something dark and ugly rising in my chest. What she needed was a bigger house, newer cars, expensive vacations, designer clothes. What she needed was a husband who worked 70-hour weeks to pay for all of it while she played tennis and gossiped with her friends. What she needed was someone to blame when she got bored with the life she demanded I provide. Emma rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic, Dad. People grow apart. It happens. But what you did tonight was cruel and unnecessary." "You know what's cruel?" I asked, my voice getting quieter and more dangerous. 24 years of my life invested in people who think I'm a joke. A wife who throws my gifts in the trash and a daughter who thinks I deserve to be cheated on because I wasn't exciting enough. Sarah was crying harder now, probably hoping for sympathy. Emma just looked bored. "So what's your plan now? Destroy everyone who doesn't worship you?" I smiled at her, and something in my expression made her take a step back. "My plan is to stop being the family doormat. Your mother wants excitement? She's about to get more than she bargained for." I walked past them both, heading for the garage where my tools and my real planning were waiting. Behind me, Sarah's sobs grew louder, but I didn't care anymore. She'd made her choice. Emma had made hers. Now it was time for me to make mine. The next morning, I changed the locks. When Sarah tried to get back in after spending the night at her sister's, she found her belongings packed neatly on the front porch with a note. "Hotel's that way. I'm sure Richard will pay for it." The war was just beginning. Richard Castellano made his first mistake by showing up at my house 3 days after the party. I was in the garage working on a carburetor rebuild when his Tesla pulled into my driveway. The engine sounded rough. Probably still dealing with the honey I'd introduced to his fuel system. He climbed out wearing a $1,000 suit and an expression that suggested he was used to intimidating people. Too bad for him. I'd grown up in neighborhoods where guys like Richard were considered practice dummies. "We need to talk," he announced, striding into my garage like he owned it. I didn't look up from my work. "Pretty sure we don't. You've caused enough damage. Sarah's career is ruined. My reputation is compromised." "Your reputation?" I set down my wrench and finally gave him my full attention. You mean your reputation as a married executive who screws his employees? Yeah, that must be really hard to recover from. His face flushed red. You humiliated a room full of innocent people. Innocent? I laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. Monica knew about the affair and helped cover it up. Jennifer's been spreading gossip about Sarah's marriage for months. Your company president's been cooking the books to inflate his bonus. Want me to keep going? Richard's confidence wavered. How do you know all that? Turns out when you start digging into one person's secrets, you find everyone else's too. Amazing what people will say when they think nobody's listening. Red had been busy the past few weeks, using his security contacts to gather intelligence on Sarah's entire social circle. Turned out the country club crowd had more skeletons than a Halloween store. What do you want? Richard asked, trying to regain control of the conversation. I want you to stay away from my wife. She's filing for divorce. She'll be your ex-wife soon enough. I smiled at him, the same carnivory expression that had unsettled Emma. Until those papers are signed, she's still mine, and I protect what's mine. Richard stepped closer, puffing up like a rooster. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. I picked up a tire iron, testing its weight casually. See, you corporate types think intimidation is about lawyers and lawsuits. But I learned a different kind of persuasion growing up, the kind that leaves marks. You can't. I moved faster than he expected, grabbing his expensive tie and pulling him close enough to smell his designer cologne. I can do whatever I want in my own garage. Self-defense, you understand. Wealthy executive breaks into working man's home, threatens his family. Jury of my peers would be very sympathetic. Richard's eyes went wide with genuine fear. Good. He was finally taking this seriously. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice barely above a whisper. You're going to get in your fancy car and drive away. You're going to stop taking Sarah's calls. You're going to find a new job in a different city, preferably a different state. And if I see you anywhere near my family again, I'm going to introduce you to some tools that weren't designed for fixing engines. I released his tie and stepped back, giving him room to run. He stumbled toward his car, his face pale and his hands shaking. This isn't over. Yes, it is. I hefted the tire iron again, and he practically dove into his Tesla. He was gone in seconds, leaving the smell of burned rubber and fear behind. I went back to my carburetor work, humming an old country song about cheating hearts and consequences. But Richard's visit had given me an idea. If he thought he could intimidate me, he'd probably try the same approach with others, and that meant he'd make more mistakes. I called Red. How's your surveillance equipment working these days? Like a charm. Why? Because I think our friend Richard is about to do something stupid, and I want it on camera when he does. Red chuckled. I'll get the good stuff ready. This is getting interesting. More interesting than he knew. Because while Richard was focused on me, he'd forgotten about all the other people Sarah had betrayed. And some of them were starting to get ideas about payback. Monica from HR had been particularly vocal about her feelings since the party. Turned out she'd been covering for Sarah's affair because she thought they were friends, not because she was getting anything out of it. Learning that Sarah considered her a spineless kiss, it had hurt worse than any professional betrayal. Jennifer was dealing with her own problems. Her husband's unemployment had become public knowledge thanks to Sarah's loose tongue, and their social circle was treating them like pariahs. She blamed Sarah for destroying what little dignity they had left. Even the company president was feeling the heat. The board had started asking uncomfortable questions about the workplace culture and executive oversight. Richard's affair with a subordinate was just the tip of the iceberg. I didn't have to destroy Sarah's world. She'd done that herself with her careless words and careless actions. All I had to do was sit back and watch the dominoes fall. But I'd learned something important from 24 years of marriage. Sometimes you had to give the dominoes a little push. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in downtown family court. Sarah showed up with a lawyer she couldn't afford, wearing a conservative dress that was supposed to make her look sympathetic. I came alone, carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would speak for itself. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s who'd probably seen every sob story and manipulation tactic in the book. She listened to Sarah's attorney paint me as a vindictive husband who'd destroyed his wife's career out of spite. Your Honor, the lawyer said in practiced tones, my client made a mistake, but Mr. Thompson's response was disproportionate and cruel. He deliberately sabotaged her professional relationships and publicly humiliated her in front of colleagues. When it was my turn to respond, I kept it simple. Your Honor, I documented my wife's infidelity. and shared her own words with the people she was talking about. If she's embarrassed by what she said, maybe she shouldn't have said it. I presented the evidence methodically, the GPS tracking showing her hotel visits, the recorded phone calls with Richard, the text messages where she mocked her friends and coworkers. The judge's expression grew colder with each revelation. "Mrs. Thompson," the judge said finally, "did you or did not you engage in an extramarital affair with your supervisor?" Sarah's lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear, but she ignored him. "Yes, but—" "And did you make the statements about your colleagues that were presented at your company party? Those were private conversations taken out of context. Context is irrelevant. You made disparaging comments about people who trusted you while conducting an affair that violated your company's ethics policies." Mr. Thompson's response, while dramatic, appears to have been factual rather than vindictive. The gavel came down hard. "I got the house, the cars, and primary custody of Emma. Not that she wanted it anymore. Sarah got her freedom and a harsh lesson in consequences. But the real fireworks started in the courthouse parking lot. Sarah was crying on the steps, her lawyer long gone, when Richard's Tesla pulled up. He'd ignored my warning about staying away, probably thinking the legal proceedings would protect him. He was wrong. "Sarah," he called out, jogging over in his expensive suit. "We need to talk." That's when Monica appeared from behind a pillar, her face twisted with rage. "Well, well, the happy couple reunited at last." Richard spun around, startled. "Monica, what are you doing here? Watching karma work?" She held up her phone, recording everything. "Turns out Sarah is not the only one with secrets, Richard. Want to tell her about the other women? Or should I?" Sarah's tears stopped abruptly. "Other women?" Monica smiled with vicious satisfaction. "Oh, honey, you thought you were special? Richard's been running the same game on half the women in the company. Jessica from accounting, Linda from marketing, even the new intern. You were just the latest conquest." Richard went pale. "That's not—" "Monica, you're lying." "Am I?" Monica pulled out a tablet, swiping through screenshots. "Because I've got hotel receipts, credit card statements, and some very interesting security footage from the office building. Turns out our executive parking garage has excellent cameras." Sarah stared at Richard with dawning horror. "You said I was different. You said we had something special. We do." Richard grabbed her arm desperately. "Sarah, don't listen to her. She's just trying to cause trouble because she got fired." "I got fired because of you two," Monica snapped. "But at least I'm not stupid enough to think a serial cheater actually cared about me." That's when Jennifer showed up with her husband, Tom, a big guy who'd been out of work but not out of shape. He looked at Richard with the kind of focused anger that came from months of humiliation and financial stress. "This the fool who ruined our reputation?" Tom asked his wife. "That's him," Jennifer confirmed. "The one who thought our problems were entertainment." Richard was looking around frantically now, realizing he was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. "Look, everyone, just calm down." Tom didn't look calm. He looked like a man who'd been pushed too far by people who thought they were better than him. "You cost me job interviews. Companies heard about my situation through the gossip network, decided I was a risk. My family's been living on food stamps because of your girlfriend's mouth. That's not my fault." Tom's fist connected with Richard's jaw before he could finish the sentence. Richard went down hard, his expensive suit scraping against the concrete. When he tried to get up, Tom put a boot on his chest. "Stay down," Tom advised. "I've got a lot of frustration to work out, and you're the perfect target." I watched from the courthouse steps as Richard's world collapsed around him. Monica was still recording, probably planning to send the footage to his wife's divorce attorney. Jennifer was crying with relief, finally seeing one of the people who destroyed her dignity get what he deserved. Sarah was backing away from all of them, realizing she'd chosen the wrong side in a war she'd started. "Dave!" Sarah called out desperately. "Dave, please, help me!" I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved for 24 years, who'd thrown away our marriage for excitement and advancement. She was scared and alone, abandoned by the man she'd betrayed me for, facing the consequences of choices she'd thought were clever. "Help you?" I asked quietly. "The way you helped me when you were laughing about my love letters? The way you helped our marriage when you were screwing your boss?" Sarah's face crumpled. "I made a mistake." "You made a choice," I corrected. "Every hotel visit, every lie, every cruel comment about people who trusted you. Those weren't mistakes, they were choices, and choices have consequences." I turned and walked away, leaving her in the parking lot with the wreckage of her old life. Behind me, I could hear Tom explaining to Richard exactly what he thought of executives who looked down on working men. Monica was still recording, probably getting enough evidence to destroy what was left of Richard's reputation. Emma was waiting by my truck, looking shaken by everything she'd witnessed. "Dad, are you okay?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw something I'd missed before. Fear. Not of me, but for me. She'd been protecting her mother out of misguided loyalty, but watching Sarah's world implode had shown her the truth about consequences. "I'm fine," I told her. "Better than fine. I'm free." As we drove away from the courthouse, I caught a glimpse of Sarah in my rearview mirror. She was sitting on the steps alone, her expensive dress torn, her perfect makeup ruined, finally understanding what it felt like to be discarded like trash. They'd thought I was the joke. They'd never seen the punchline coming. But the best part? I'd barely gotten started. Richard's wife would get those recordings. His company's board would see the security footage. Sarah's friends would remember every cruel comment she'd made about them. I didn't need to destroy them anymore. They'd do it to themselves, just like they'd always done. I just made sure everyone was watching when it happened. Justice wasn't always pretty, but it was always satisfying.